Welcome to World News by Halandzovskyi. If you value calm, clear, and fact-based coverage of geopolitics and policy, please subscribe, leave a comment, and share your perspective. Today, we examine recent U.S. military strikes on oil tankers linked to Venezuela, the political backdrop involving Donald Trump and Nicolás Maduro, and the wider context including immigration policy. In recent weeks, the United States carried out targeted military strikes against vessels believed to be transporting Venezuelan oil. These actions reflect escalating tensions over control of energy resources and geopolitical influence in the region. The tankers involved were reportedly connected to shipping networks that move oil under arrangements linked to the Venezuelan government. Caracas has faced long-running economic pressure due to sanctions and diplomatic isolation, and oil exports remain a central part of the country's attempts to sustain revenue. The U.S. government justified the strikes as an effort to disrupt activities that undermine established sanctions regimes and to curtail economic lifelines that fund authoritarian rule in Venezuela. Officials have argued that halting these oil flows serves both economic and strategic interests, limiting resources available to the Maduro government while signaling that sanctions ought to be taken seriously. Donald Trump, maintaining influence over U.S. conservative politics and policy discussions, has expressed public support for strong measures against Venezuelan leadership and its economic networks. His stance aligns with broader Republican priorities on energy, national security, and pressure on regimes seen as hostile or destabilizing. At the same time, Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro has condemned the strikes and framed them as foreign interference in sovereign affairs. Caracas insists that its oil exports are lawful and necessary for domestic needs, accusing the United States of unilateral aggression. These developments complicate an already fraught relationship between Washington and Caracas, one marked by sanctions, diplomatic disputes, and occasional overtures toward negotiation or cooperation in other policy areas, including migration. The strikes and diplomatic tensions must be understood in a broader political and strategic context, energy and geopolitics. Venezuela's economy has long depended on oil, and control over petroleum exports has global implications. Disruptions to Venezuelan oil flows can impact global markets, influence prices, and shift regional supply dynamics. For the United States and its partners, reducing the influence of state actors they view as adversarial is part of a larger strategy that includes energy diversification and ensuring supply stability through trusted partners, political signaling. For Donald Trump and his political supporters, firm action against Venezuelan oil networks reinforces a narrative of strength and resolve. It appeals to constituencies prioritizing national security, border control, and pressure on governments perceived as undermining democratic norms or regional stability. How this aligns with immigration policy, particularly border enforcement and restrictions on asylum, underscores the intersection of security and domestic political priorities. Immigration policy intersection, issues of migration and border control often overlap with foreign policy decisions in Washington. Administrations concerned about regional instability frequently link economic hardship, displacement, and political repression with migration flows. By applying pressure on regimes like Venezuela's and asserting control over economic networks, policymakers argue they can address one factor driving regional migration pressures. Critics, however, warn that military action and economic disruption can exacerbate humanitarian crises, potentially increasing displacement and cross-border movement. They argue that without parallel efforts to support civilian populations and address underlying causes of migration, enforcement-focused approaches may fall short. Regional stability, Latin American governments, and international observers are closely watching the situation. Some neighboring states urge diplomatic solutions to avoid escalation, while others align more closely with U.S. policy priorities. The long-term consequences of these strikes depend on how both governments, in Washington and Caracas, manage subsequent diplomatic engagement and how regional organizations respond. Ultimately, what happens next will shape not only U.S.-Venezuela relations, but also wider debates on how energy security, military action, and immigration policy intersect in an era of shifting global alliances. Thank you for watching this report on world news by Denis Halandzovskyi. If you found this explanation informative, please subscribe, leave a comment, and share your perspective. Independent reporting helps us make sense of complex developments that shape our world. Stay informed and see you in the next update.